Good evening, everyone. My name's Kate Forde, and it's my pleasure to be your chair for this evening. Thank you all, both in person and online, for joining us for this discussion, which marks the public launch of the Royal College of Nursing's Art of Nursing programme. And thank you to the RCN Museum team for organising this event. We're lucky to have Sarah Cheney here and Kai Flynn from the museum team. Most of all, a huge thanks to the three wonderful artists we're lucky enough to have with us this evening: Heather Agyepong, Poimenidis, and Sjogren. I'll introduce each of them properly in a moment and invite them to say a few words about their work before we open up the discussion. Before I do that, I need to go through some housekeeping. Please note, for those of us in the building, there are no planned fire alarm tests. So if the alarm does sound, please exit the building through the nearest fire exit to your left or at the back of the room, and the muster point is outside on Cavendish Square. The toilets are through the doors to your left and down one flight of stairs, or there are accessible toilets through the doors at the back of the room. If you're joining us online, you will be on mute throughout the event. There will be the opportunity to ask questions using the Q&A function at the end of the event. If you're having any issues, please contact the host in the chat and they will do their best to help. Okay, thank you for your attention. Now, before we hear from our panellists here, I've been asked as the curator of the Art of Nursing exhibition to say a little something about the show itself and to set the context in which we're holding this conversation. So here goes. I'm going to try and use the clicker. Yes, lovely. Okay. The Art of Nursing exhibition, which I've had the great privilege of curating for the RCN, brings together a variety of contemporary and historic artworks and tries to relate them to the broader themes of relevance to nursing today. One of the issues the show explores is how the image of the nurse has been mythologized and sometimes mobilized for political ends. In contrast to this, it considers nurses' ongoing struggle for visibility and recognition within a wider medical profession that has too often cast them as subordinates. And finally, it illustrates the dynamic relationship between creativity and care. In developing the show, the aim above all else was to celebrate the incredible work that nurses actually do and to confront the uncomfortable truth that still, all too often, they are expected to lose themselves in the needs of patients, to fade into the background. So, one of the key intentions of this exhibition is to place nurses firmly at the centre of the frame by presenting art about them and by them. It's about acknowledging the skill and sheer complexity of the job and highlighting nurses' own agency, self-determination, and authority. Another goal was to demonstrate how representations, images, and artworks have the power to shape society's expectations and beliefs and even mediate our experiences of life. So on the one hand, this show includes an image like this, which is an original poster design heralding the arrival of the College of Nursing here in Cavendish Square. And as well as the obvious aesthetic links being made to the suffragette movement, I think it's also really visually interesting in the context of the kind of heroic imagery that we were seeing such a lot of during the COVID pandemic. The exhibition tries to make connections between these sorts of images and to ask how they may have come to shape our attitudes and ideas about nursing. And importantly, it suggests that artists, both past and present, have played a pivotal role in constructing, resisting, and revitalising society's expectations of nurses. Ultimately, the intention was to foreground how the image of the nurse has often been shaped by political and institutional narratives, sometimes used to symbolise national virtue or sacrifice, while obscuring the realities of power, gender, race, and labour that underpin the profession. Another key objective for the exhibition was to demonstrate how nurses have integrated art into their daily work and continue to use it to make sense of their own lived experience. This naturally emerged through conversations with artists, nurses, or perhaps nurse artists, I'm not quite sure which way round it should go, two of whom are on our panel tonight. These individuals, and indeed all the individuals I've been fortunate enough to meet through the process of developing this show, spoke powerfully about the personal impact of their art practice on their own identity and their well-being. And they also reflected on the question of how creative work might help challenge and enrich other people's perceptions of nursing. Finally, to respond to this relationship between creativity and care, something I know our panel will help us explore further, I wanted the exhibition to highlight the importance of bearing witness to nursing lives. to draw attention to the formidable, endlessly responsive task of nurturing and sustaining life, to reveal the creativity of nursing and society's deep dependency on those who see us at our most vulnerable, the ones who, as in this sign, one of the signs that Peter Liversidge made in this collaboration with RCN members, says, those who make the unbearable bearable. And I'll end with Joy Gregory's beautiful portrait of two nurses from her series Love of a Long Vocation, which is also in the exhibition. And now I would like to open up the discussion to our three wonderful artists and to you in the audience as we explore together how care is imagined, represented and practiced today. Okay, so the way this will work is that I'm going to invite each artist to give a short presentation, and we'll hold on to our burning questions until the end, if that's okay. Over to Heather. And may I introduce you, Heather, say a few words. So Heather Agyepong is a British Ghanaian artist and actor who lives and works in London. Her art practice is concerned with mental health and well-being, invisibility, the diaspora, and the archive. She uses both lens-based practices and performance with an aim to culminate a cathartic experience for both herself and the viewer. She adopts the technique of reimagination to engage with communities of interest and the self as a central focus within the image. We are proud to be including her photograph, Mary Seacole II, in the Art of Nursing exhibition. This work, one from a series which was first developed for London Women, a series of public artworks across London by women and non-binary artists. And I believe Heather's now going to tell us a little more about that project and set it within the wider context of her practice.
Thank you for that intro. I just really want to congratulate you. This is a brilliant exhibition, and in a time where conversations around nurses and their mental health and their well-being, it just feels like a really perfect time for this show. So congratulations to you and the RCN for making this happen. So I'm going to briefly talk about kind of the context of my practice. So as Kate said, I am a visual artist. My work centers around mostly like mental health and well-being, catharsis, and this feeling of the body as a place of kind of restoration and healing. That's primarily my questions. And I'm just going to go through some projects which I think relate to this idea of care renewal. So this project was called The Body Remembers, and I worked with a psychiatrist, a psychotherapist about trauma being in the body, this idea of a lot of people having psychosomatic symptoms of pains, ailments. There's a lot of how trauma is connected to things like fibromyalgia, lupus, and a whole bunch of women are suffering with kind of PTSD ailments, but are unaware that they've been through something traumatic. So that's kind of what happened to me. I had these kind of PTSD symptoms, headaches. I was going to the doctor a lot, blood tests, and nothing was found. And then through therapy, they were saying, maybe you've gone through something traumatic. So I did a call out. I was specifically looking at Black British women because there was a lot of overrepresentation of these women suffering from kind of severe mental health ailments. And I did a call out and asked, have you experienced kind of PTSD symptoms? And through kind of listening to the body, then have you realized you've been through something traumatic? And I did a call out, and the call out was very overwhelming. It was very humbling, actually. So I worked with a psychotherapist, and I was interviewing these women about not the trauma of the event itself, but what was happening in their bodies. And I wanted it to be kind of a range of ages. So the youngest was 17, and the oldest was 80. And I was asking them about their what kind of trauma feels like, because I think sometimes when you talk about mental health, it's quite difficult to, it's quite cerebral. And I wanted the performance to be about what it feels like. So I was improvising a movement piece every day for around 2 months for 45 minutes. And there's this thing called, I was always interested in kind of alternative therapies. There's a thing called authentic movement, which is letting your body move through improvisation and this idea of catharsis to release out of the body. And yeah, I did this, and it was the audience weren't just kind of watching, but they were being a witness. So I asked them kind of what's happening in your own body. So it's not just about what you're seeing me move, because I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but I just felt like I needed to move. But what's happening in their own body. And then we gave them 45 minutes to kind of decompress this. And this idea that I always want my work to be in dialogue with the viewer, not just me kind of showing them an image or a performance. I really want the question to go back onto the viewer. So that's kind of my idea of kind of care and conversation with the work. The next project, Kate mentioned, was that I'm interested in reimagination. So what I've done in the past is look at women from history who I found kind of inspiring and wanting to highlight their lives, but not just purely to highlight, but this feeling of they had something important to say historically, which I think hasn't been heard. So there's often a conversation I'm having with kind of embodying these women. And they're always for mental health reasons. These women have often allowed me to explore parts of my mental health that I've always felt kind of embarrassed or like shamed about. So these are from two different projects. The one on the left, there is a woman called Sarah Forbes Bonetta. She was adopted by Queen Victoria in the 1900s, and she kind of lived under the Queen's rule. She was given as a gift to Queen Victoria. And I was interested in I wanted to make images which were of kind of vulnerability and fragility and times where I physically acted strong, but I really felt really weak and broken, and I really wanted to share that experience. So there's like 12 images, and this is one of the images from that series. The image on the right is another woman from history, again, the 1900s, a woman called Aida Overton Walker, and she spoke about Black women being on stage and finding a sense of freedom and ownership. And at that time, I felt none of those things. So she was a famous vaudeville performer. She would dance, and she was so good at dancing that she was invited to Buckingham Palace to teach the royal family how to dance, which is quite interesting to me. And she kind of gave me a sense of kind of empowerment during a time where I didn't feel empowered. And I guess that we're actually going to skip to the Seco series. So I remember I was asked by the Mayor of London and Tate to, not him directly, Sadiq didn't come to me, but I was commissioned. And they wanted to talk about London women who have made a contribution to London. And I remember during that time, there was a conversation about Mary Seacole being on the £20 note, and is she kind of worthy being on the £20 note? And there was this conversation always, there was a dialogue with Mary Seacole and Florence Nightingale, like they can't just exist together, there has to be like one or the other. I just found that really interesting. And when I was reading more about Seacole's life, what's really wild to me is that her mother was married to a British army soldier, and she was free, because in that time, she's from Jamaica, that time there was intense kind of slavery and subjugation happening, and yeah, Mary Seacole was a freeman, I guess you would call her. And even though she had kind of businesses and she was interested in kind of generating wealth for her, one of her intentions was to be a nurse. I just found that really admirable, and just be free. And why would you think about caring for other people? But there is just something really, maybe that says a lot about me rather than Mary, but I just found that to be really interesting, that level of choice of care. Because when I was reading more about Seacole, she went to places, there was an interview with a transcription about someone celebrated Seacole for all that she did for this particular area, but the last line was, "But it's a shame about your skin color," which was just wild happening. And it's interesting, I was reading at the RCN this idea of like, there was a stat about racism has increased by 55%, and it just doesn't end. And this thing, what articulates really beautifully in your exhibition is that this kind of, there's always a tension with nurses, whether it be gendered questions, race questions, there is always a tension of taking advantage of the care and the altruism that sometimes happens with nurses, which I really wanted to highlight. And these images are quite overly saturated. The greens, the blacks, I was interested in the Jamaican flag because green, black, and yellow is the Jamaican flag. And Siko's mother was a herbalist. So in these images, Siko is kind of looking for cow parsley, and cow parsley is used for medicinal purposes in the past, and this idea of Siko kind of just trying to find this and going on this journey. And also the loneliness I really wanted to talk about, because also in my research, Siko wanted to be kind of a nurse in the Crimean army, and she was rejected time and time again, and it was really her choice, and she funded the journey to go herself and to go and create the British Hotel, which was kind of gave people food and shelter, but also helped with medicines. This kind of voyage by herself, and kind of wanted to think about the isolation sometimes nurses must have. Me dreaming about, and my experience with nurses of caring for people and often not getting the same level of care or respect back. And I wanted to kind of think about those ideas of what Siko must have gone through, and actually still what's happening, I imagine. So yeah, the image was part of a billboard, and it was there in 2017. But I'm also an actor, and I trained at this theatre when I was 17 or 18, so they just kept it there. So if you're in North London, that image is still there, but it's just an important dialogue about the contributions of kind of Caribbean peoples. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Heather. What a great way to kick us off. So many interesting themes there to pull out. I love what you said about the body as a place of restoration and healing. And also how you draw the audience in. You really feel that when you look at these images. We are witnesses. Thank you. Okay, hold those thoughts. Please, may I go on to introduce our next speaker, Sjogren. Jisun comes from a multinational background through adoption and is originally from South Korea. She trained and practiced initially as an artist and came into nursing at a later stage of her life, graduating in 2018 and going straight into main theatres as a newly qualified scrub nurse. Her artwork incorporates nursing alongside several streams that are much more personal concerning her adoption and residual mental health struggles, which she has explored through deep psychoanalysis and thinking. Her exquisite drawings, just 2 of which are featured in the exhibition, are drawn from memory. And these works take inspiration from classical anatomical studies as well as her formative experience at Montessori school, where art was regarded as fundamental to childhood development. Over to you, Jisun.
Thank you very much, Kate. Again, like Heather, I want to say amazing. Thank you for your exhibition, for doing it, and all your efforts. And I share with you, Heather, as well, what you were saying about the trauma, carrying it in the body. I thought that really, sparked a thought in my head. Right, so I'm going to have to read, because I'm not very good at talking ad lib. So my name is Jisun Sjogren, and I thank you for inviting me here to talk about my work. Yes. Oh, tool.
Oh, this one?
Go back, keep going. Keep going, one more. There you go.
Thank you.
So I thought when preparing for this presentation it would be easy, but 8 minutes, that's not a lot. And speaking in a nursing environment, I find that I have to adjust my language. So to stop me from deviating, I am now reading these notes. I want to begin with the title, The Art of Nursing. What is that? It could mean how well we do our job, nursing, or that we use nursing as a form of art. When I think of it, I used to separate art and science, which in some ways they are, but I joined them together in my own mind. Although I started my career as an artist doing things like exhibition work, restoring antiques, assisting others in art projects, and doing workshops in the community, I then also became a mum. There's my daughter. So, slide 2. That's it. And then my parents got older, and their friends got older. Here you can see me and my 90-year-old father. After my mother died in 2011, I took care of my father because he was almost completely blind with macular degeneration. Also, my own personal situation had changed, so I had to find more steady work to survive. Care work was the obvious choice, as it was the most advertised job around at the time. My initial experiences were visiting clients and patients in their own homes, which to me opened another world, the world of healthcare. Every person I met was visually interesting, a stark contrast to the models in life drawing classes. And what fascinated me was the resilience in coping with their diseases. Slide 3. Sorry, you can do After a few years of care work, I embarked on my nursing training. And like Kate said, in 2018, I went straight into main theatres. It was like stepping on board a spacecraft. As I continued living in this way, I sensed the differences and similarities between the two worlds of art and nursing. Both occupations require presence. I don't mean being alert, but being awake and conscious to see, observe, assess, and respond. Remarkably, in art, as in nursing, they both have vast amounts of tools and materials. The other important thing is that both occupations give me a sense of reward, satisfaction, and achievement. Slide 4, yeah, please. And my go-to is the pencil or pen. And when I sketch, I scan what I draw, just a few lines to record the main details, the shapes and sizes. Later on, if I see them again, I visualize them in my memory. One major thing is, when I do nursing pictures, I have to think about the how and what I intend to draw. I have to consider the moral or ethical implications of each image, but it always starts with what catches my eye. Long ago, when I was small, an American artist friend told me to carry around a sketchbook to draw anything I found interesting. And it's the randomness of it that leads towards new possibilities. An example is demonstrating how procedures, big and small, happen. And then the recording also helps me to remember how the nurses and doctors use technology. I often feel caught up in the middle. On the one hand, like an artist, I don't hold back, yet on the other, like my colleagues, I am careful about being too personal. Finding the balance is the tricky bit. All I know is, when I do art, I love the silence, peace, and quiet, and I enjoy being outside the world of art. If I were to pass on a tip, I recommend sharpening the skills of seeing and observing, and note the difference between looking and seeing. Regarding the surgical pictures, as a newly qualified nurse, I knew almost nothing about scrub nursing and their particular role in theatres. And the introductory literature I received back then, I didn't find very useful. I panicked, worrying about my dyslexia and my struggles to retain information fast and accurately. So I sketched a lot, which is quicker. A simple sketch for me replaces 1,000 words. However, I have to watch myself as familiarity can fade into the background of my mind. So, to keep my interest levels alive, I find opportunities to continue drawing. Slide 6. Yeah. Actually, a chance discovery happened whilst exploring new ideas. I put my memory to the test. I drew a hospital door entirely from memory, and I realized how much memory actually distorts reality. Compare these two drawings. So this phenomenon seems to happen when the visual and emotional perceptions melt together. As a result, we have a mixture of several doors at once. That's the one on the left. And on the right is the actual door I wanted to draw. Another thing I noticed is that visual memory, like muscle memory, needs to be repeated over and over again. It puzzled me as I wanted perfection, but now I don't fret over my pictures anymore, as long as the image makes sense. Also, I work every day with the same machinery, in the same rooms, with the same people, so it means I can edit my pictures very easily. Okay, last one. And then COVID-19 hit us. I was lucky that I could go out to work. I was redeployed in the ITU units across the 3 sites, witnessing a lot. My efforts to illustrate standard elective operations migrated and turned into the recording of what took place during the pandemic, particularly inside our operating theatres. I felt an overpowering urge to record everything and knew that this would eventually belong in the public domain. It also helped me focus, and I found solace in moments of silence and isolation. Now we are in the post-COVID era, which I think changed our world forever. And the rise in mental health problems is extraordinary, affecting all of us. And to finish off, my own wandering mind, plus the clock ticking, is diverting my attention towards my personal, like Kate said, psycho-emotional history. These themes are taking shape in my recent work, so I will end this presentation by saying that, by accident, I married the two, art and nursing, and that I am living a dream, saving lives and doing art to feed my hungry soul. So, yeah, there you go, that's my last one. Thank you for watching and listening.
Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you, Jason, for feeding all of our hungry souls. Yeah, there's so much, again, to pick up on there. I loved your eloquence and honesty, and I really loved how you described stepping into theatre for the first time as like stepping on board a spacecraft. Now, for our third and final panellist, Panos Poimenidis. Panos qualified as a registered nurse in Greece in 2006 and has been working at Guy's and St Thomas's NHS Foundation Trust since 2014. Alongside this, he's volunteered at the Florence Nightingale Museum, initiated and led art tours for patients and staff, served on the Guy's and St Thomas's LGBT+ network, and contributed as a steering committee member of the RCN History of Nursing Forum. He's also an artist and set designer in Studio Procopiou, a photography studio based in London, co-founded with his partner. He has a strong background in creative project management and visual storytelling. His photographs, Rainbow Street, feature in the exhibition and provide an incredibly poignant response to his own experience of the COVID-19 lockdown in December 2022. Over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Kate. Thank you very much. Thank you, both of you. One is missing, but doesn't matter. So during COVID-19, the National Contemporary Museum of Athens did an open call for healthcare professionals to interact with their collection with a way of relief and to create a dialogue with the contemporary collection they have with the artwork. So I participated on that, and they were sending us through like electronic card, like through email, like pictures from the collection to interact as we wanted to, with painting, photographs, anything that we want to do creatively. One of the pictures that, the artwork that got inspired from for the Rainbow Street is Francis Ailey's Camgan, which Francis Ellis is a Belgian artist that he's living in Mexico, and he got inspired from Zapatista's army that they're using they created handmade guns. Instead, he replaced the location for the bullets and put like film. And he plays with this idea that you shoot with a gun and you shoot with a camera. And what that means and how powerful could be a camera as powerful as a gun. I choose to shoot with a camera and not with a gun. So I took 5 Polaroids and 1 electronic one from my phone around December. It was a difficult time because it was COVID, I was working, I was exhausted, I was homesick, I was thinking of my family. So I was working around London, in South London, and I took a few pictures. All of them, they related with something very personal with me. For example, the first picture is from the tube, but means it represents my job, and that I'm considering always like the others that this is who I am. And then the pigeons is relating with my father, because my father has pigeons in his terrace. He still has. I think in London it's not anymore, but they're having around the UK. It's an old school, like a hobby. Then something very important is this picture from the Rainbow Street. There is a Rainbow Street around Camberwell, which is in my neighborhood, and I was walking around that street quite a lot with a friend of mine, which is here, and that was a very important point for me to go through this crisis, actually. I was running also around there, so I was doing a lot of things physically and mentally around that street. And then we have the Rainbow Street, and also then we have like a picture from St. Thomas's Hospital from the North Wing that looks south with an actual rainbow. So during the pandemic, the rainbow used quite a lot about the NHS workers, but also for me, because I'm a queer, rainbow for me is about the queer community. So I had these 2 symbols that I had to deal with. And I had to choose, who am I? I'm a queer artist, I'm a queer person, am I a nurse that's someone clapping for me and I'm happy for that? So that was a challenge, because I was trying to understand my identity. To reflect on these pictures, I reflected with some poetry. Also something which I will show you in a bit. Also something important for me in one of the pictures is like flags from a shop that was selling like Christmas trees. But in the exhibition I chose, because it was a series of pictures that I took, some of them there in this project, and then the 4 of them there like in the exhibition here. I chose to have one exhibition with the European Union flag, because I wanted, for me it's very important to understand my identity after Brexit and what that means for me. Where do I belong? Do I belong here? Do I belong to Europe? Do I belong to Greece? I've been 14 years in London, and I had to find a place to belong. But for me, the place that I belong is for sure in my queer community. And that was a way for me to feel better and to have relief. And then this is the poem. So I wrote it in Greek, and then they translated like in English as well. So you can have a minute to read it. And then I will read it as well.
I thought it would be really nice to hear the poem in Greek, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Έχω μάθει να απλώνω το χέρι μου από καιρό. Αυτή είναι η δουλειά μου. Ένα χέρι βοηθείας. Βλέπω τα περιστέρια να πετούν όλα μαζί στον ουρανό από μικρός. Στην ταράτσα του πατέρα μου. Είχα πάρει μαζί μου μια σημαία, μα ποιος ξέρει που την έχω βάλει. Stay strong. Η μάχη δεν έχει τελειώσει. Η βιτρίνα είναι ακόμα σπασμένη στο κοσματοπωλείο και η σιωπή μόλις έχει σπάσει στην πλατεία. Θα προχωράω μαζί σου στους δρόμους από ουράνια τόξα, δίπλα από το νοσοκομείο και μαζί με τη φίλη μας την Ντόροθι. Just one thing to say about the queer identity. When I was here, I realized, I heard that like people, they used to say for someone that is gay, that is friends of Dorothy. So for me, that is an honor to the previous people that were here and that were not able to be free and able to express themselves. So I honor them in my community.
Thank you so much, Panos. Thank you. What a beautiful way to conclude the three presentations. It was really interesting to hear about the genesis of Rainbow Street. What an intelligent project that was for the museum to launch, and really special to hear your poem in the original Greek. Thank you. There's something about hearing a language that isn't our own. You kind of attune more into the emotion, the feeling, the rhythm. And I guess maybe that's a bit like nursing too, you know, in that nursing care so often is about what's beyond the words, in a way. And you obviously make the very important point about your own questioning around belonging and identity in a post-Brexit landscape. Thank you. So I'll open it up for questions in a moment. But before that, I did just want to pick up on something Jason said that really stayed with me about how both nursing and art require presence. You put it really beautifully as being awake and conscious to see, observe, assess, and respond. And that sense of presence feels absolutely central to everything that you do, and to both art and nursing. It's about being deeply attentive to what's in front of you for the nurse, and for the artist, it's about noticing the world closely enough to capture something true. For the nurse, it's about being fully there with another person, listening not just to words, but to tone, to body language, even to silence. And so all that noticing, I guess, in a way, that attentiveness becomes a kind of care. And Heather, I think your work really connects with that idea too, the way you bring your full self into your images and invite us to be equally awake and responsive to them. It's such a reminder that art, like nursing, can create these spaces of attention and care and empathy.